All right, everybody. Thank you for attending this meeting. I'm really appreciative for you taking the time out of your busy day and evening to want to learn about this really important topic about loving yourself. And I always like to start off with this disclaimer. So, by participating in this virtual event, you acknowledge that my positive psychology, transformational mindset, and integrated nutrition certifications are not to be construed as psychological counseling, therapy, or medical advice. Okay. My comments are backed by scientific evidence, life experience, and opinion. Individual results depend on unique learning ability, motivation, commitment, and other factors. You agree that there are no guarantees as to specific outcomes or results from the information received through this event. Okay. Let me hide this bar real quick. We are going. All right, so welcome to the journey together. And whether you're navigating your own healing path, supporting a loved one, or working as a helping professional, this presentation offers tools to transform your understanding of healing and loving yourself. So I want to start off by saying that this is a space for compassion, understanding, and empowerment. Every insight shared today comes from both research and real human experience. And as you can see over there on the right-hand side, that's me. Probably back around 1974. I was 4 years old, probably. I was born February 17th, 1970, and that little piece of watermelon, I should say that big piece of watermelon was probably bigger than my head. And as you can see, those 1970 clothes, I was eating watermelon, it seems like on a cold day, which is kind of weird, I suppose, because really you're supposed to eat watermelon in the summertime. Anyway, just want to tell you a little bit about me and my story. So, and why I had to learn to love myself. And maybe that's something, by what I share, you could get something out of it or identify with the feelings. So, I was born into an atmosphere where my parents, my mom decided to come out of the closet when I was 4 years old. She was gay. She was born gay in 1945. I was an only child and my parents got divorced. And because my mother went through that experience, she had to deal with her own mental issues. And, she grew up in a family where her sister was very abusive, physically abusive. And, if you don't break these patterns, they kind of go into the next kind of phase of your life and you carry those things into your family situation. So, back in the 70s, I kind of was on the receiving end of spankings and not the belt came out many times, my pants came down, I went over my mom's knee and bare ass got hit with a belt, right? Some of those things weren't justified and sometimes maybe they were, but regardless, I don't think it's justified to be hit with a belt or hit regardless. It doesn't do well for your self-esteem and it causes you to develop these beliefs, between the ages of 0 and 7, we're like sponges and we develop these beliefs that I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? I did something wrong. Why don't people like me? And there was blowback as a result of my mom coming out of the closet. My mom's sister had three children, and I was the youngest, and they were like my brothers and sisters. But when that happened, my aunt and uncle decided that they didn't want to have anything to do with my mom anymore. So they abandoned us. So it was very difficult to deal with that. And, my mom getting divorced from my dad, she went on welfare, right? My dad really didn't pay child support. I ate government cheese. I was in a neighborhood where I was the only Jewish kid and I had a lot of anti-Semitism, people spitting in my hair, calling me effing Jew boy. I was short. I dealt with some stomach issues at a very young age. So I had a lot of trauma that I had to overcome, going through my teenage years, which, my dad got remarried and had two boys but he moved to Florida when I was around 9, so I had to deal with that. So there was a lot of different adversity that I had to deal with when it came to loving myself. Nobody really, my mom did the best that she could do, and I was able to heal that trauma when I was 22, going to Jewish Family Services, getting the help I needed, and addressing and confronting my dad, my aunt and uncle, my mom, and was able to, really work on myself. I was very introspective at a very young age. For some reason, I always felt different. And in my teenage years, when I was 14, I was reading books by Deepak Chopra. I was on Channel 13, PBS specials by Wayne Dyer. I was watching Tony Robbins. I bought his cassette tapes. So it was kind of always, I think, innate in me to want to know why. And I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe that, we're here in this earth school to learn, and we all have our different meanings of meaning we give to life. And I believe that things happen for you. And, I don't like to say happen to you because you have to be very careful with that. I don't think there's things that happen to people and it happens to them on purpose. You don't go on an airplane and because one person, it's their time, the whole plane goes down. I don't believe that. But I do believe that when I look back at my life and the meaning that I've given my life, I see how each thing kind of shaped me to kind of bring me to the place I am today, which is really, gave me the gifts that I have in order to, explain and teach you these concepts that, I learned from doing the work. Okay. And this is about doing the work, healing the trauma, learning to love yourself, so that way you could basically be able to, make yourself a priority and then learn to be empathetic and love others. So that's a little background on me. So I grew up kind of feeling lonely. I grew up feeling sad. I grew up feeling confused. I grew up feeling angry. I didn't think people liked me. I didn't like myself. And until I actually, hit bottom and realized that I really needed to like undo this trauma was when I was able to do the work to begin to love myself and create what love means for me, which is something that I created when I was 22 called the 9 ingredients of love. And I'll go over that in the presentation. So I want you to think about like your journey. I want you to think about what love means for you. Okay. So the self-love revolution, healing your relationship with yourself, which is really the most important thing. Most of us were never taught how to truly love ourselves. And without this essential foundation, we get stuck in patterns of self-doubt, toxic relationships, and emotional burnout. And, I want you to join us for this transformative journey toward becoming your authentic and self-acceptance and inner peace, because that's really the place that you want to eventually get to, right? So many times I hear some people talk about like they're so desperate to get into a relationship because they want to fill some hole deep within themselves, right? And they don't know that that's what they're doing based on some things that they kind of just didn't really realize or learn the things that they should have, which it would give them the skills to make themselves their first priority. Okay. So our journey together today, we're going to understand self-love. We're going to explore what genuine love, self-love means and what it doesn't. Childhood and attachment, examine how past experiences shape our self-perception. Breaking barriers, identify and overcome obstacles to self-acceptance. Practical techniques, basically learn evidence-based tools for mental reprogramming, which is really important. Healing pathways, develop forgiveness, which is a big thing when it comes to forgiving yourselves and realizing like a lot of things that have happened in your life really weren't your fault, which is part of my journey. I think one of the movies, what was the movie with what was the movie? Good Will Hunting, where if you ever saw that movie, that boy, he basically was a boy genius. And one of the things that Robin Williams said to him, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. We have to learn to develop self-forgiveness, right? Be able to establish boundaries and also have self-compassion for ourselves. So throughout our session, you'll gain actionable strategies from positive psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, to transform your relationship with yourself and create a life of authentic joy and connection, okay? Which is what we really are striving to do. So what does self-love really mean? Self-love is not narcissism, selfishness, or toxic positivity. We have to be very careful about that. It's not about ignoring your flaws or believing you're perfect, right? That's the opposite. I think when it comes to loving yourself, that's the antidote. What I see, the opposite or the negative behavioral pattern that causes people to not love themselves could be perfectionism, because we really strive to be perfect, and we're never going to be perfect. And true love is treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a good friend, accepting your whole self, including imperfections and mistakes, setting healthy boundaries that honor your needs and values, and taking responsibility for your well-being and growth, and recognizing your inherent worthiness, separate from achievement. If you're a spiritual person, like how I view my meaning of my life, that this is, I'm a spiritual being having human experience, and really taking responsibility for my well-being emotionally, physically, intellectually, and spiritually is very important, in understanding like this is a meat suit that I'm in, right? And I have to learn to navigate and take care of it. And it's a symbiotic relationship between energy and bugs, microbiome, which is the other thing, like I said, that I am really passionate about, is the microbiome and gut health. Okay. The biggest barriers to self-acceptance, and I mentioned one of them, perfectionism, right? The belief that your worth depends on flawless performance, and that you create impossible standards that guarantee feelings of inadequacy. It's almost like, there's a difference between having a growth and a fixed mindset. With perfectionism, you're stuck in fixed mindset. You label yourself as a failure if you fail at something, instead of like realizing that you're not a failure. Sometimes, you just have to get back on the horse and try something new and try something different. That's a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset where you're really living out of fear. We do social comparison where we're measuring ourselves against other people. Social media, when I grew up, we didn't have any of that. And now today it's everywhere, everything. And it's very difficult, like, not just social media, but I remember when I was growing up, you'd see commercials of like these beautiful women models, and women would basically, try to live up to that standard. And we use social comparison. And the same thing with men. I did it myself. Like I had body dysmorphia disorder when I was a teenager and I was getting picked on. I started lifting weights, and it became like an outside job for me, not an inside job, because I thought if I look good, then girls would like me, right? I compared myself to other people. Negative thought patterns, again, all or nothing thinking. These thinking traps cause a problem, which is, catastrophizing, mental filtering that emphasize flaws while really discounting your positive qualities. And research shows that these barriers aren't just psychological, they create measurable stress responses in the body. You probably heard of somatic responses. The body keeps the score, which affects your immune system, heart health, and cellular aging. So breaking through them is essential for both mental and physical well-being, right? So if you're living in trauma and you're not really you're stuck in sympathetic nervous system state, compared with your parasympathetic nervous system, you have an autonomic nervous system. I go into this in another when I talk about trauma. I don't know if you were on last week or the week before. I did a presentation on trauma. So if you are new to this group, you could go into past events and you'll see that there is from 2 weeks ago, a video of that, and you could listen to the presentation on trauma. But, these are things that really, if you are dealing with trauma, most likely you're really having a hard time loving yourself. If you're not dealing with that trauma, you're stuck, and it's not your fault. You just don't know how to get out of it, right? But part of loving yourself is taking the first step and getting help, right? When you're stuck, you need to get help. That's the first step in really loving yourself, is to identify that and understand that you don't want to live that way anymore. Okay. The foundations of self-love, attachment theory. Okay. This is really important. I know, like, again, when I was growing up, I didn't grow up in a secure attachment. I grew up in an anxious attachment. My mom was very anxious, and, that stemmed from, her upbringing, and it caused a lot of problems for me. So when it came to trusting in relationships later on in life, during my teenage years and my early 20s, it was very difficult for me. Like I had to unlearn the beliefs that I had that, I developed because of how my parents and how my mom spoke to me, how people spoke to me through in the environment, how friends spoke to me, how I was bullied. Like, I didn't trust. I had these beliefs that I wasn't good enough. What's wrong with me? I did something wrong. Why don't people like me? I didn't have the secure attachment where I felt, love and a strong self-worth. I had to develop. I had to like unlearn these beliefs and relearn new beliefs and really learn to love myself and shed some of the perfectionism, the unrealistic expectations that I had, the self-centered fear of being afraid that I was going to lose what I have, or afraid that I wasn't going to get what I wanted or needed, right? There's also people who, like, their parents avoided them. They never said I love you at all to them. Maybe you could identify with that. And that results from, being unresponsive, dismissive care. It leads to emotional suppression, fierce independence, and a discomfort with intimacy, making it hard to nurture oneself. So if you could see, like, if you could identify with some of these things and you're in a relationship right now, or, when you don't love yourself, you tend to pick partners who are the same as what you grew up with. And maybe that's where you are now. And you have to like really understand that, no matter what age that you are or where you are in life, that you could make a decision to change and learn concepts and tools to change this. You're not stuck. You could unlearn these beliefs and relearn the right things that you need to learn in order to love yourself and become vulnerable and have this secure attachment. That's what you want to have in life, a secure attachment with yourself, and then having relationships that are secure, not having relationships that are fostering fear or not helping you live a flourishing life. Okay. Life isn't about just surviving, it's about thriving, and you were meant to do something great. Okay. So understanding sorry, I'm just moving something because I can't read that thing there. Understanding your attachment style is the first step toward consciously rewriting old narratives and building a loving, secure relationship with yourself. Very important. Okay. The childhood connection. Again, this all goes back between the ages of 0 and 7, maybe a little older, where the messaging that you got, the early messages, the words, expectations, behavior you witnessed as a child became your internal dialogue. This is a learned behavior. You were born like with a clean slate, and then you were programmed. These are like programs. We're a biological electrical computer that has a subconscious that stores these things, right? So whether you receive consistent love or conditional approval shapes how you speak to yourself today. When you're in front of the mirror, what are some of the things that you say to yourself? If I were to ask you, can you name 5 things that you love about yourself? Can you do it right away? Or is it hard for you to do that? Okay. The unintelligent beliefs. I'm not enough. I must be perfect. My needs don't matter. These were all formed before your brain could critically evaluate them, yet they drive adult behaviors. Okay. Again, I want to reemphasize that if you have some of these unintelligent beliefs, good news is there's a thing called neuroplasticity, okay, which means that you could form new beliefs. To give you an example of this, say if you were a child and you got bit by a dog, you might develop the belief that all dogs are bad. Now, if you weren't desensitized that all dogs aren't bad, and you carried this into adulthood, well, your beliefs are tied to your thoughts. Your thoughts are tied to your feelings. Your feelings are tied to your actions, and your actions are tied to your results. So basically, when you see a dog, you're basically going to think all dogs are bad. What is the feeling? Fear. What is the action? You're going to run away. What is the result? I can never go over anybody's house or be around dogs. And that cycle just continues. But the thing is that you can change that. You could become desensitized to dogs at any age and learn to be able to build a new neural pathway, which sheds the old one. The old one which is very strong because there's synapse, there's the axons and dendrites, and I won't go into how it all works. but basically you could create a new neural pathway that'll slowly shed that bad one and increase the good one, right? So it's reversible. Attachment patterns, your early bonding experience create templates for how you relate to yourself and others. Secure, anxious, avoidant, disorganized attachment styles profoundly impact self-worth. So understanding these foundations doesn't excuse harmful patterns, but provides the compassion and context needed to begin healing them at their source, okay? Communications enduring imprint. So the communication style experienced as a child profoundly shapes our inner voice and self-perception, directly influencing our capacity for self-love in adulthood. These early patterns become our internal blueprint. So, we really want to strive for being validating and supportive. That forces a secure inner voice, promoting self-acceptance and trust in one's feelings and self-worth. If you had some like critical and dismissive people in your life, that cultivates an inner critic, leading to self-doubt, people-pleasing, and constant need for external approval. And that's not a healthy way to live. And then you could grow up in an atmosphere where it's inconsistent and neglectful. And that creates anxiety, a search for external validation, and difficulty recognizing or prioritizing one's own needs. So recognizing, again, these formative influence in the first step towards consciously rewriting all narratives and fostering a truly loving self relationship. I'm really trying to drive this point home. That's why I had 2 slides that's almost identical, to really drive this point home, that the communication, the way that you speak to yourself, what you learn, the inner things, like if you need to write and start journaling so you could go back and read some of the inner dialogue that's going on in your head, because you never learned how to become your own cognitive-based therapist to question your thoughts, right? Which is called real-time resilience skills. You're going to make assumptions about things based on some of these beliefs that you have. And if you develop these beliefs, these therefore become a habit, okay? A habit consists of a cue, a routine, and a reward. So a cue could be a trigger. Then you do the same routine over again, and the reward could not be a good thing, or, but basically that's how a habit is basically formed. The good news, again, like I'm telling you, is that you could change a habit. You could basically rewrite the script for a habit, but you have to put in the work, right? And build these new neural pathways and shed the old ones, unlearn the things that basically you learn that aren't serving you, okay? So we learn to reject ourselves. Many of us learned that love was conditional on our performance, appearance, or compliance with others' expectations. And we internalize these conditions. We begin these patterns of self-rejection, harsh self-criticism, perfectionism, difficulty accepting compliments, constantly seeking external validation, putting everyone else's needs before our own, being codependent, feeling like an imposter despite accomplishments, tolerating mistreatment in relationships, self-sabotage when things go well, numbing behaviors to avoid emotional pain. And again, like, these aren't your fault. They were adaptive strategies for surviving in environments where unconditional love wasn't consistently available, okay? Again, hopefully you could see some of these things, and maybe it's something that is startling for you and you're realizing, and I want it to be, because you deserve to have a life that is full of love, joy, and kindness. And you need to be able to get to a place where you can. But again, if you have trauma, or if you are continuing patterns and being in relationships that aren't serving you, then you're going to continue to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I want to really drive the point home that if you see something in a bullet that you identify with, it's time to start to do the work, okay? So the neuroscience of self-criticism. So basically your brain has evolved to prioritize negative information as a survival mechanism. This is negativity bias. And what does that mean? So self-criticism activates your threat response system, triggering cortisol and adrenaline release. We have what's called a fight, flight, and freeze mechanism that is called your your limbic system. You have what's called the prefrontal cortex, which is your logical thinking system. So we were built to basically, from back when we were cavemen, to be able to protect ourselves, but we're not cavemen anymore. Things are a lot easier. So, but yet we still have, like, these neural pathways that we could be stuck in fight, flight, or freeze. And that is tied again to what I talked about earlier, is our autonomic nervous system, which consists of our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous states. So if we're stuck in sympathetic nervous system state all the time, we're basically in survival, and that could really cause havoc physically, emotionally, intellectually, and cause a lot of problems. Okay. So if you have trauma, a lot of these things could be repeated self-criticism, creates neural pathways that become automatic and unconscious. Your amygdala, again, which is where this the limbic system is your emotional processing center, becomes hyper vigilant to perceive failures. You might be really, quick to react because you didn't really learn the skills to communicate properly. If you grew up in a very avoidant or anxious atmosphere, you might be reacting instead of learning to practice the pause and be able to take care of yourself and use your limbic system in order to communicate properly. Your executive functioning decreases when under self-critical stress, making positive change harder. Again, what I mentioned earlier is that, you can change. The good news is neuroplasticity means you can create new, healthier neural pathways with consistent practice. Now, they say it could take between 21 and 66 days in order for this to happen. The science says there's a beautiful lady who I really like. Her name is Dr. Carolyn Leaf, and she's done over 40 years of science, and she says it takes between 60 and 66 days to build a new neural pathway. But you could do this, okay? You could build a new neural pathway. To give you an example of how you could build a new neural pathway, which includes like your memory, your hypothalamus, your whole brain, is, say for instance, you have a job where they basically want you to change your password every 3 months, okay? Or every month. So you go in one day and you change your password and you go up and you get a cup of coffee and you come back. What do? You start typing in the old password. So with deliberate practice, okay, deliberate practice, doing something over and over again, in 2 weeks or maybe even a week or maybe 3 days, you might start typing that new password, no problem whatsoever. It doesn't mean that you shed that old neural pathway, that old password isn't there, but you still basically you have to like make it that new neural pathway stronger. The same thing goes with building a new healthy habit or changing a belief. Like, you have to find evidence and build a new healthy habit and evidence in order for you to change and use deliberate practice. So you can do this. But again, if you have suffered some severe trauma, you need to go and get help in order to resolve that trauma so you could go and learn the tools to be on the path of learning to love yourself. Okay, very important. The journey of change, rewiring for self-love. So true self-love isn't a switch. It's a journey through distinct stages of behavior change. You have to remember this is about changing your behavior. And unpinned by the brain's incredible capacity for rewiring itself, again through neuroplasticity, understanding this process empowers us to navigate the path with patience and persistence. So this is kind of like the different steps for behavior change. So pre-contemplation is unwilling or unaware that you actually need to change. This is just how I am, which is really a fixed mindset. We want to learn the difference in what I teach is the difference between what a fixed mindset and a growth mindset is, right? Fixed mindset, oh, this is how I am. People stay in relationships and say, oh, this person is just this is who I am. And people get stuck and they're afraid to like leave because they've grown and the other person hasn't, but they stay in because maybe they become codependent. But that's not really loving yourself, right? If you really deserve the love that you really want in your life, You have to be able to set boundaries and do the things you need to do. So that's where contemplation comes in, beginning to recognize negative self-talk or patterns, weighing the pros and cons of cultivating more self-love. Maybe there's another way. Then there's preparation, then there's action, and then there's maintenance. So again, there's stages. So if you're at the beginning, like if you're here today, which I commend you, pat yourself on the back for being here. If you're trying to learn something new, you're going to be in the contemplation stage. I want you to begin to recognize some of this self-talk and stuff that's going on, okay? And each step in this journey physically reshapes your brain. And every time you choose self-compassion over criticism, you strengthen new neural pathways, making self-love a more accessible and natural state of being, okay? Very important. So practical tools, programming your mind. We could use CBT, right? Identify automatic negative thoughts, examine evidence for and evidence against, and create balanced alternative perspective. Example would be, I made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. This is how I learn and grow, okay? This is what I teach through positive psychology, through my course called Get Real, Deal, and Heal, is how to become, your own cognitive-based therapist. Really important to understand that. What is the evidence for? What is the evidence against? Some other tools I use. If a friend came to you with the issue that you're experiencing, what advice would you give that friend? And you're going to give them really great advice, so you have to take that own advice. All the answers are within us, I truly believe, and we have to learn the tools. Again, this is about learning tools, building your tool chest. When I went to therapy between 1992 and 1996, and I also went to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, between 1992 and 1996, because when I thought I had a problem with drinking, because I was binge drinking at the age of 22, and because I was covering up the pain that I felt, I couldn't deal with the pain. I basically, had to learn these tools. I had to build a tool chest in order for me to, live life. And when I finished therapy, nobody taught me these tools. I was like, okay, what's next? You heal the trauma. Okay, that's one thing. That's great. But then what do you do after that? Right. So that's why I created the Get Real, Deal, and Heal course, to provide these tools from positive psychology to help people say, okay, what is the purpose? What is the meaning of my life? How do I bounce back from adversity? Because life is going to kick you in the ass no matter what. Just because you heal your trauma doesn't mean that your life is going to be honky-dory. You're still going to experience problems, but you need to be able to deal with those problems and be able to bounce back from adversity, because there are things called triggers, right? We all have our inner child. I have my own inner child, and I've had to learn to have a self-compassion break. When I struggle, I place my hand on the heart and say, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is part of life. May I be kind to myself in this moment. I take it a step further and I do what's called havening, right? I'll self-soothe myself, and I'll visualize the inner child, Dan, because I know I was able to identify, this is coming from the belief that I did something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You're an adult. I'm taking care of you. And I visualize the picture that I showed you in the beginning of me hugging that little child, holding that watermelon, that everything is going to be okay. Okay. But I'm also using CBT, real-time resilience skills, at the same time, find the evidence for, find the evidence against. Value clarification, identify your core values and make decisions aligned with them rather than seeking external approval or perfection. Again, the inner child dialogue. That's what I just kind of talked to you about, right? And these evidence-based practices create, again, whoops, sorry, got to move this bar. This bar keeps popping up. Every time somebody comes into the meeting, the bar pops up again. These evidence-based practices create new neural pathways when practiced consistently over time. The key is small, regular efforts rather than perfectionism. Again, really important to remember, it's progress, not perfection, okay? So 6 essential qualities for self-love. So cultivating self-love is an active process, requires developing specific inner qualities, and these pillars support a deeper, more resilient relationship with yourself. Self-awareness, healthy boundaries, gratitude, authenticity, resilience, self-compassion. Okay. Really important. Like we want to develop these qualities because they transform self-love from an abstract concept into a tangible practice way of being that profoundly impacts your daily life and relationships. Okay. So like these are really important to develop in order for you to, cultivate self-love for yourself. And then really, once you cultivate self-love for yourself, you could, project those qualities onto your loving relationships, right? It's really important. But it all starts with the foundation, with yourself, right? True self-love begins not with changing who you are, but with deeply understanding who you are. Okay. Self-awareness is the conscious knowledge of your own character, feelings, motives, and desires. It means observing your thoughts and emotions without judgment. Again, being your own cognitive-based therapist, right? When you go to therapy, you heal your trauma, but then does the therapist teach you how to become your own cognitive-based therapist? Not really, but this is a tool that you need to learn. Identifying your triggers for self-criticism and unhealthy patterns. Where are these things coming from? I still have those beliefs from my inner child. Identifying thinking traps. There's many people never even heard of the term called thinking traps, which could be jumping to conclusions, mind reading, personalization, externalization, maximizing, minimizing. There's a bunch of like, once you learn like some of these things of how your mind operates with neuroplasticity, again, like your limbic system, your prefrontal cortex, understanding thinking traps, you start to develop a tool like very quickly of real-time resilience skills, and you just go through things very quickly to be able to step outside of yourself. It's called metacognition, where you're able to think about your thoughts. Okay. Your thoughts really aren't your thoughts. All right. So just want you to know that, like, there's been studies done on this where one particular study, they did fMRI scans uh, on people, like they had two groups, one of people who played the piano and well, two groups who actually play the piano. What they did was they did fMRI scans on one group while they played the piano of a song, and they scanned their brain to see what parts of their brain lit up while they were actually playing the piano. The second group who played the piano, they didn't have them play the piano, but the same song that those people who played the piano, they said, we just want you to visualize you playing that song. And when they scanned their brains, guess what happened? The same parts of the brain lit up. So your brain can't really tell the difference whether you're actually doing something in reality or you're just thinking something visually. So you need to understand that you could step outside of your thoughts if you learn to practice the pause and be able to use metacognition to like really think about your thoughts. Okay. Recognizing your strengths, values, and what truly brings you joy. This deep insight is essential because you cannot truly love or care for something you do not understand. Okay. It empowers you to break free from old narratives and intentionally cultivate new, healthier neural pathways towards self-acceptance. That's the key here, self-acceptance. The boundary revolution, okay? Most important, when you truly love yourself, you set boundaries. You make yourself your first priority. Like in my relationship with my significant other, we have an agreement that we make ourselves the first priority. Our second priority is our mission in life. Our third priority is our relationship. But the third priority, making ourselves like, it sounds kind of like, oh, you're neglecting your partner. No, when you love somebody and in your relationships where you want that person to like make themselves the first priority, where they're able to take care of themselves emotionally, physically, spiritually, intellectually, they're going to be so much better for you. If they have like a mission in life, like they believe in something and you support that for them, that's awesome, right? And the third part of it is like, if you respect both of those, you're going to feel like the first priority. Your relationship, the person, your significant other, your kids, whoever, you're going to basically want, the relationship is going to flourish. So you need to establish boundaries for yourself. What are healthy boundaries? Clear limits that define where you end and others begin. Really important. It's an invisible force field that protect your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. Expressions of self-respect that communicate how you deserve to be treated. Really important. There's signs of boundary issues. Could be codependency, feeling responsible for others' emotions, right? Difficulty saying no without guilt, resentment after interactions, emotional exhaustion in relationships, tolerating disrespect or abuse. And again, this goes back to what we talked about earlier in the presentation, where we talked about how our parents spoke to us, the communication style, the attachment theory, secure, avoidant, or was it anxious, right? The beliefs that we've created. Oh, I did something wrong. Why don't people like me? Those different things, like those things, we get stuck and we don't realize that's what's running our show. But we have to be, when we become adults, it's time for us to take responsibility and recognize these things again. And self-love requires honoring your own needs as valid and important, the most important thing. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic connection when you respect your own limits. You create the capacity for genuine giving rather than resentful compliance, okay? So again, you have to make yourself the first priority. You're not going to be good for anyone, okay? You have to do the things that that it's going to help you. And, some people may argue like, oh, I have to take care of my kids. Like they're the first priority. Yes, of course they're a priority. But if you don't like take care of yourself, like, oh, I need to like set some time if you're a woman or a guy, depending on, who's taking care of the kids, because the breadwinner now could be a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. Like you need to take time, like, oh, I need to go to the gym. Like I need to like take care of myself physically. Oh, I need some time for my friends. I need like some of the things. And that's developing a boundary for yourself, knowing what's going to help you be a better person so that way you could be the best for your kids, for your family, for your friends, okay? And for your business, if you're a business owner, and for all things in your relationship, right? You want to be abundant, you want to be loving, you want to be great because you deserve to have that in your life. And when you love yourself, you realize I deserve the very best, okay? The transformative power of gratitude, really important. There's a thing called ingratitude. We have to remember gratitude is great, but we don't want to use gratitude in the wrong way where we're covering up certain feelings. Like if you're like something bad happened and like you lost your job and you're sad and you use gratitude to kind of like not feel the feeling of sadness, that's not good. That's ingratitude, okay? The transformative power of gratitude is when, it isn't just about external blessings. It's a profound practice of acknowledging your inherent worth and the positive aspects within yourself and your life. It shifts your focus from what's lacking to what's already abundant. It shifts perspective. It reduces self-criticism. It increases self-worth. It fosters contentment. It's really important to remember the transformative power of gratitude. What can you do? You could create a gratitude list. I did when I was 22. You could do little notes where you have a fishbowl and you could write little things of gratitude, kind of like a fortune cookie thing where each morning you pull up a gratitude, read it. Before you go to bed, you could do the same thing, right? There's so many things you could do in order to help yourself using the tool of gratitude. So by intentionally focusing on self-gratitude, you actively reprogram your brain to see yourself through a lens of appreciation, making self-love a more natural and effortless state. But remember what I said. Don't use ingratitude in the wrong way. You also want to recognize that if something bad happens, you are feeling your feelings. When you love yourself, feelings are neither good nor bad. They're feelings. It's what makes us human. And we have to be able to understand the difference between feeling our feelings and getting stuck in a negative feeling. You're getting stuck in a negative feeling where you're spiraling down the rabbit hole. You're basically ruminating. You're catastrophizing. That's a problem. But when you truly love yourself, okay, you understand that a feeling is what I need to go through. You give yourself time. You set a certain time, and then you wind up going back using the tools that you have in your tool chest to bounce back from adversity quickly. Okay? Living as authentic self. So authenticity is really important. We really want to do that. Authenticity is the practice of living in alignment with your true self, your core values, and your deepest feelings rather than conforming to external expectations or societal pressures. It's a cornerstone of self-love because it honors who you truly are. So you have inner congruence, you have freedom from external validation, you have increased vitality and energy, you have deepened connections. So embracing your authentic self allows you to fully accept and love the person who you are, flaws and all, leading to a more fulfilling and self-compassionate life. Okay. So it's really important to understand that when you become your true authentic self, you don't care what other people think of you. And what the end result is, and is vulnerability. Okay. Vulnerability transcends masculinity and femininity. When you get to the point where you could be truly vulnerable with yourself and live as your true authentic self, there's no real reason to become defensive, right? Because when you really learn to love yourself and you're in a relationship and something happens maybe with your significant other and you disagree on something, you want to understand what's going on, right? A lot of people become, why do they become defensive in their relationships? It's because of some type of belief. I did something wrong. What's wrong with me? You know, uh, why don't people like me? Right? We have to, again, recognize what's going on deep within ourselves. But when you become your true authentic self and love yourself, it's so freeing. Okay. Doesn't mean that you don't get mad. Of course you get mad. Part of loving yourself too is like when I get into an argument and I feel myself start to get anxious, part of loving myself is to say, ooh, I need a timeout. And using co-regulation with my partner to say, grab her hands and I say, I love you, honey. I just I didn't eat enough today. I didn't sleep well. It's very hard for me to try to like solve this at the moment, but I want you to know that I love you and we'll get through this. Please just give me some time to like think about what you're saying and then we'll come back to it. That's another way of, it's not just like walking around when you love yourself and you're like, la di da 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 da, nothing bothers you. That's not realistic. Things are going to bother you, things are going to happen, but you have the tools when you love yourself in order to respect yourself and most importantly, respect others. Okay. That's just imagine what the world would be like if everybody had these tools. We wouldn't have such a contentious world that we live in. Let's move on. So building emotional resilience, really important. Resilience is not the absence of difficulty, like I was saying, but the capacity to bounce back quickly, adapt and grow stronger in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Listen, this is, I look at this earth as why I'm here as an earth school, right? I see some people who are like really disabled, who are born in this world. I'm like, wow, they have a PhD program. They're on the PhD, they're doctors. Me, I feel like I'm in sixth grade. Like I had to learn all these different things, and this is like an earth school. Learning goes on and on for the rest of our lives. It just never stops. And it's really the cornerstone of self-love at building this emotional resilience because it involves trusting your own ability to navigate adversity and return to a state of equilibrium. So for instance, like, I look at my life like a pizza pie. There could be my business, there could be spirituality, there could be my relationships, there could be, other things. But let's just take relationships. My relationship score between 0 and 10 could be at an 8. But what happens if my relationship suffers and we wind up breaking up? That could go down to like a 3. I could be suffering. But if I have emotional resilience and I learn tools and I learn from past experience, I want to basically have adaptability, perseverance, a growth mindset, the inner strength to bounce back quickly from a 3 back up to an 8. It may take time, but some people who don't have these skills, they may get stuck. They may resort to like drugs, alcohol, whatever they need in order to deal with the pain. So building emotional resilience, real-time resilience skills, learning how to become your own cognitive-based therapist. What is the evidence for? What is the evidence against this thought I'm having to be able to bounce back from adversity quickly? So by intentionally nurturing these qualities, you build an unshakable foundation, okay, of self-trust, enabling you to face life with courage, and compassion for yourself. The transformative power of self-compassion. Another most important thing. Self-compassion is simply giving the same kindness to ourselves that we could give to others. Christine Neff, she's if you could read a book on her or probably has some YouTube videos, she's like the expert on self-compassion. There's three different components: mindfulness, recognizing suffering without judgment or avoidance; common humanity, acknowledging that struggle and imperfection are part of shared human experience, okay? Self-kindness, offering warmth and understanding to yourself rather than harsh criticism. So, Dr. Christine Neff shows that self-compassion is more strongly associated with psychological well-being than self-esteem and provides resilience during difficult times, okay? Really important. The role of forgiveness in healing: forgiving yourself, acknowledging the hurt, recognize the pain caused by others and by your own actions toward yourself without minimizing or exaggerating it. Understanding the context. Consider the limitation, wounds, and circumstances that contribute to harmful patterns, both in others and in yourself. Choose release. Forgiveness is not condoning harm, okay? Never, but freeing yourself from the burden of resentment, right? If you're holding on to something, who are you hurting? Somebody hurt you, right? And you're holding on to it. That person may not even be thinking about you, yet you are holding on to this, and it's causing a lot of pain. Doesn't mean that you forgive the person, but you have to get to a point in your life where you're able to, free yourself from it, because all it's doing is hurting yourself emotionally, physically, intellectually, and spiritually. Again, like the body keeps the score. So you're having some type of somatic experience, which is causing you to hold on to this pain, which isn't doing anybody good, especially yourself. Practice compassion, extend understanding to yourself for past mistakes. Most importantly, recognize you did the best you could with awareness and resources available. Again, for me, like, I had to learn to forgive myself, realize that it wasn't my fault. A lot of the experiences that I went through as a kid, it wasn't about me. I held on to a lot of shame, thinking it was me, but it wasn't. I had to learn to practice self-forgiveness. And there were some things that I did as a teenager to other people that I had to go back and apologize for as well. And because I did do some harm. And that also helped forgive me too, right? So, we're all, I'm sure we all have skeletons in our closet, but we need to learn to be able to forgive ourselves. And studies show forgiveness is associated with lower levels of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, as well as better cardiovascular health. The heaviest emotional burden we carry are often the resentments we hold against ourselves. The power of vulnerability for self-love. So again, vulnerability is often misunderstood as a weakness. Again, a lot of guys may struggle with vulnerability, but in reality, it's a profound act of courage and an essential pathway to deepening your self-love. It's about daring to be seen, accepted for who you truly are, imperfections and all. So what are some of the characteristics of vulnerability? Authenticity and acceptance, healing and growth, freedom from shame, right? Deeper connection. And embracing vulnerability is a radical act of self-love. I talked about vulnerability before, so I won't go into it too much now. But these are the components. It's really important. And creating a foundation of trust and acceptance within yourself that radiates outwards into all areas of your life. Like, we are energetic beings. So, you could kind of get a feeling of people who are being vulnerable, or people who are kind of like, maybe building themselves up and saying things that, because they have some type of self-esteem issue, or they're worried about what other people think of them, right? I used to do it, when I was in relationships, and, I was with a partner who was really smarter than me. And I used to feel intimidated by a strong woman who was really smart. And I had to learn that that's a wonderful thing to have. But as a man, like, I felt threatened by that. And so my self-esteem was low. And I had to learn, like, wow, I feel blessed that I have a strong woman in my life who really is nurturing and cares for me, instead of looking at it like, oh, she's like bad and she's making me look bad. And that's a lot of men struggle with this because we were never given the playbook, and there we have this is a whole nother uh PowerPoint presentation webinar that I do about the truth about masculinity, and maybe I'll do that one sometime. But I think it's really harder for men to practice the power of vulnerability. But listen, if you're able to do it, it's so freeing. Okay. Again, vulnerability transcends both masculine and feminine energies. Okay. Building a self-love practice, okay? The journey to self-love isn't a destination, but a daily practice. Small, consistent actions create lasting changes. Here are some things that you could do. Morning self-acknowledgement ritual for 2 minutes. Begin each day by placing your hand on your heart and acknowledge one quality you appreciate about yourself. Compassionate self-talk throughout the day, okay? When you notice your inner critic appears, consciously shift to a supportive inner mentor voice. Again, that's metacognition. Okay. Evening reflection, you could journal. Weekly boundary check in, review where you honored your boundaries and where you need to strengthen them. There's a lot of other things that need to be done as well. Again, if you're experiencing trauma, you need to overcome that trauma. You need to understand what's going on there in order for you to learn some of these tools. That's the first step in really changing these things. I think most people are suffering from trauma, and it could be a small trauma, it could be a big trauma, it could be micro traumas that are built up over time. But it's really important to acknowledge that and be able to, address it, so that way you can start learning some of these practices. And the key here is consistency. Consistency matters more than perfection. Again, it's progress, not perfection. And research shows that small daily practices to have greater impact than occasional intensive efforts. Okay. 9 ingredients of love. What are your 9 ingredients of love? Okay. These are my 9 ingredients of love. When I was 22 years old and I realized that I needed to get help, and I went to Jewish Family Services and AA, and I got mentored by men, and I realized that I didn't love myself. And so I created these 9 ingredients of love, and I got it copyrighted. I wrote these 9 ingredients: sincerity, unselfishness, patience, tolerance, humility, good temper, generosity, and guilelessness. This is exactly what I wrote, and I hung it on my refrigerator. And I read it morning, noon, and night, right? I had to learn to love myself. Of course, there were other things I needed to work on, but I really needed to build this foundation of what love means for me. So, what does true love mean for you? It's deeply personal, yet often built on universal elements. So, consider these 9 ingredients. So, your homework tonight, if you don't have like 9 ingredients of love, is for you to come up with 9 ingredients of what love means for you. Write them down, write out the definitions, hang them on the refrigerator, and start the practice. This is your revolution. It's an invitation to rewrite your story, one compassionate thought and intentional action at a time. The power to heal and to transform your relationship within yourself lies within you, and it's waiting to be unleashed. So you really need to take effort, and this is my homework assignment for you, your first step in order to really learn to love yourself. The gut-brain connection, a foundation for self-love. So beyond emotions and mindsets, self-love is deeply rooted in our physical well-being. A thriving gut microbiome directly influences our capacity for self-compassion and inner peace. Again, like, people don't understand the importance of the gut-brain axis. 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. 50% of dopamine, other GABA, other things are produced. It's connected to your HPA axis, which is your hypothalamus, your adrenals, your pituitary gland, which produces cortisol. This is connected to your central nervous system. The vagus nerves is the communication pathway, really, between your brain and your gut. And it's all connected. So you really need to understand that your mood is influenced by your gut. Stress response regulation, the gut directly communicates, again, I said, with your HPA axis, helping regulate cortisol levels. Lower stress creates mental space for self-compassion, patience, and forgiveness. Inflammation and self-perception, gut dysbiosis, right, which I treat, which means that your gut rainforest, okay, because you have more microbiome than you have cells in your body, and they're on your skin, they're in your gut, most in your gut and your mouth, right? Basically, this, if say for instance, if an animal, let's picture a rainforest. A rainforest is perfect, right? Like everything balances itself out. But say if one animal died, it would throw off the whole ecosystem. Dysbiosis means you have like an imbalance of your microbiome, which can cause a problem. And this has to do with going into other things such as leaky gut and SIBO and other things that could cause like autoimmune problems. But healing the gut supports clarity, confidence, and self-acceptance. Also, it had to directly is correlated with embodiment and mindset. A healthy microbiome fosters a deeper connection to your physical self, reinforcing practices like mindfulness, gratitude, making it easier to treat yourself with kindness. So when you truly love yourself, you understand that you have a symbiotic relationship. Like I said this, I think earlier, that this is a meat suit. We have bugs and we have energy. What do they do when our heart stops? They use electricity to like get our heart start beating again. That's the bundle branch system. We have what's called sensory neurites in our heart. Like our heart and brain are connected. Like these are really important concepts to understand. So not just nurturing your mind, but nurturing your heart, nurturing your gut. Your gut health isn't just about physical comfort. It's a profound act of self-love that impacts your emotional landscape and overall sense of worth. So what you're putting in your mouth to feed these microbiome, to help these metabolic processes do the things they're supposed to be doing is truly important. So when you love yourself, you're taking care of yourself physically as well. Okay. The heart-brain connection, a foundation for self-love. So beyond the poetic, your heart plays a critical biological role in your capacity for self-love, influencing your emotions, resilience, and inner peace through a powerful two-way communication system with your brain. So you have, your heart rate variability, your heart-brain communication, right? The heart and brain are in a constant two-way communication via the vagus nerve. Heart rate variability affects better emotional regulation, resilience, and stress recovery. You have what's called oxytocin and the connection. The heart releases oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, promoting a feeling of trust, compassion, and safety towards both others and yourself. You have emotional memory. Research indicates that heart stores and processes emotional information. So you probably heard of people who have heart transplants and they get a heart from someone and they start taking on the characteristics of the person, of the donor, right? So, and that's what I mentioned earlier about sensory neurites. Your heart has 40,000 of these sensory neurites, which actually stores and processes emotional information. Negative experience can lead to closed off states, hindering self-love. Heart-centered practice like forgiveness, breath work help repattern these emotional imprints. An embodiment of love. Many experience love physically as warmth in the chest by continuously directing this sensation inward through affirmations or mindfulness. You cultivate a deep, embodied sense of self-love rather than just an abstract concept. So your heart is both biological and symbolic hub for self-love. So you really want to, regulate stress. By regulating stress, releasing oxytocin, anchoring positive emotional experience, your heart helps you shift from self-criticism to self-compassion, transforming your relationships with yourself at a fundamental level. So we kind of have like a triangle, a triage of three things at the top: your brain, your heart, and your gut. You need to take care of all three. Very important to build the foundation for self-love. The spiritual connection to self-love. So beyond psychological frameworks, self-love is deeply intertwined with spirituality. And many traditions see self-love not as indulgent, but as honoring the sacred. So again, you want to see yourself as worthy and whole. Connection, not separation. We're all connected, right? My own personal experience, I'm also certified in yoga. I'm kind of a yogi. I believe we're all connected, that there is an energy, right? There's science now that if you're into quantum physics, that tells us that we're all connected, right? It's not just woo-woo, it's actually scientific. We're cultivating compassion and forgiveness. Many spiritual paths emphasize compassion, okay? Both outward and inward. Embrace presence and authenticity. Spirituality grounds you in the present moment. dissolving anxiety about past or future, right? And living with purpose and alignment. Like, why are you here? Again, you were born to do something great with your life, you know? And again, it goes back to we don't get to choose like what situations we're born into, or maybe we do. I kind of tend to believe we do what I was born into to basically get me to where I am, but some people may not believe that. But it's individual, the meaning that you give to life, right? Living with purpose and alignment. When you love yourself, you find the meaning why you're here. One of the things I believe is you're here not to suffer. I believe you're here to do something great with yourself. So spirituality provides the context for self-love, reminding you that you're not just a body or a mind, but also a soul, right? I believe again that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And when you nurture your spiritual connection, you naturally deepen your capacity for self-compassion, authenticity, and resilience. So your self-love revolution begins now. As we conclude, remember that choosing self-love is a revolutionary act in a world that often encourages self-criticism and external validation, okay? And listen, the path isn't easy, but each step is going to bring you to feeling comfortable within your own skin, accepting your mind, body, and emotions, releasing perfectionism, building healthy relationships, okay? And living authentically. So you really want to strive to really work on yourself and do the best that you can to know who you are and why you're here. But it starts with you. And again, don't forget that homework assignment about writing what your 9 ingredients of love are and what they mean for you. And the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. And it's time to make it a loving one. Okay. So thank you for joining this exploration of self-love. May your path forward be filled with compassion and joy. And I love this quote. It's anonymous. I don't know who wrote it, but I love it. I'm going to say that I created it. Remember, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. Okay. And again, my business is Heal Hub Advisors, and you could go to my website. I do have, again, like that course that I told you about. I work on gut health. I also have my Get Real Deal and Heal course. So if you're interested in any of those things, there's also a free consultation to speak with me. I'm going to stop sharing now and see how many people we have left. I am going to go into the chat and see. I see 5 things in there, 6 things. Let's see. So we have about, let's see, it's 8:19. Oh, thank you for the great class. Can you post the recording link on Meetup? Yes, it's definitely recorded. So for those who came in late, the meeting is recorded and I'm gonna have a link for you tomorrow. I'm gonna put it in the chat in the actual event, and I'm gonna send it to everybody who registered, okay, for the event. Okay, so again, I looked at it, there was probably like 400 and something people who basically registered for this event. I knew realistically we weren't going to get 450 people, and my Zoom thing capacity is only 300. So even if we did, only 300 people would be able to get in, and it shows 455 people going. So for the 55 who are still here, I really want to thank you for being here. I hope you learned a lot. Again, this is something that I truly think is really important. I'm looking to see if there's any questions in the chat. I like how you correlate the mind-gut connection. Healthy eating can increase your capacity to love yourself more effectively. Yes, definitely. It sure can. And everything that we do is basically physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually is important for us to do. Unfortunately, sometimes we're born with, like people could be born with diabetes, people could be born with obesity, right? Um, and you could just imagine like people who were born with certain issues that are no fault to them, and on top of that, getting the negative communication styles spoken to them can make their problems so much worse. But even if you were born with something that caused that to you to like have maybe some of these negative beliefs or have trauma, again, the most important thing to understand is that you could build new neural pathways. that you could get the help that you need to break the cycle, right? One of the most important things for me in my early 20s that I always told myself is that if I wanted to have a family, and I have two boys, 21 and 18, is that I was going to raise those boys to be vulnerable young men who have confidence and are able to express their feelings and their wants and needs, and break the cycle, right? So, you got to remember, like, loving yourself, learning to love yourself just doesn't impact you. It impacts the people around you as well, right? So you owe it to yourself. That's one of, like, the things that I think is important to understand is, you know, understanding, like, an act of love would be to work on yourself so you could break those patterns. So that way, like, the people who are like your children in your life could learn those skills in order for that cycle to be passed on to their children, and learning the right things, right? The right way to treat people. And again, all these things have a ripple effect, right? We have so much contention in the United States and divisiveness in the world. Just imagine if people could learn these skills, right? The world will be a much better place. Uh, can you overcome uh, can you overcome anxiety with self-love? Absolutely. That was my number one problem. I was anxious. I think the only thing that kept me while I was learning things was the ability to, I started lifting weights when I was 11, okay, because of the bullying. And I still lift, like, I'm 55 now, and I just love working out and eating right and doing these things. I think the one thing that really helped me with my anxiety was the ability to use somatic practices. Like, the word somatic wasn't even invented until maybe recently. And somatic, like, to reduce your anxiety, is to move your body, like, to release. Like, you really want to be able to do some practices such as, like, Tai Chi, yoga, exercise, like, that really helps with anxiety. What helped me overcome the anxiety from a mental perspective was addressing the trauma and understanding the beliefs and the inner child work I needed to do to understand what beliefs were causing the anxiety. Now, there's healthy anxiety. Anxiety is not a bad thing. Like, you should experience some anxiety. If something happens in your life, like, you're going to experience some anxiety. Again, what I mentioned earlier in the presentation is that you're going to have, like, anger, you're going to have sadness, you're going to have anxiety, you're going to have these emotions. The key is not to get stuck in the emotion. You have to learn how to process the anxiety. If you heard a rumor that your job was laying off people, I think that should make you anxious, right? But then, like, what do you do when you hear that rumor? I need to become my own cognitive-based therapist. It's a rumor. So what do I do? What is the evidence for and what is the evidence against that thought that I'm going to lose my job? And you use real-time resilience skills in order to, help yourself with that. And of course, you go update your resume, right? And maybe take action and look for and to protect yourself. But having anxiety is a normal thing. Again, the key is not to get stuck in the anxiety. Okay. So I don't want you to say, oh, another thing we have to really understand is the words we use, right? People will say, I'm depressed. Are you really depressed or are you just sad? We have to, like, be careful with the way that we express ourselves. You could say, like, oh, I'm anxious. Okay. But is it anxious or I'm concerned? There's a big difference between being concerned and being anxious. Okay. So, this is about, like, the positive self-talk. If you're used to saying, oh, everything's going to go bad all the time, or I can't, or I won't, you have to remember, like, words have meaning. Like, you've developed a habit, right? The best way that I could describe, like, how you could change a habit, which is a cue, a routine, and a reward, right? And these are some of the things that I teach in my Get Real, Deal, and Heal course is, and I'll put the link, let me put the link in here. And you know what I'm going to do for you guys, as a result, if you're interested in this, okay, and I'm trying not to be salesy, but I just remembered something. Um, if you're interested in learning these concepts and tools, this is my website. What was that code that um, what was the code that I was doing? I'll look it up. I have a coupon code. Basically, I usually do my course for like 349, but I have a coupon code that if you use that checkout, it would only be $99. And I'm trying to remember what the coupon code is. I'll go into and look for it before. But the point I forgot what I was talking about. The point I was trying to make was, what was I talking about? Somebody help me. I forgot. Let's see, anxiety of loss of a partner and trauma as a result of it. When you have or have to restart your life without a partner. Thanks. That's tough. I mean, again, that's my homework. Thank you. Yeah, anxiety. Listen, things happen in life. That's why we talked about building real-time resilience skills, and it's hard. Like, if someone passed away, the love of your life, I mean, it's tough. You have to seek help. I think the one thing that I know for myself, when I was at the lowest point in my life, I got divorced before. Both my parents had passed away. My mom died when I was in 2005. I was 35. My dad passed away when I was 38. Like, I had to learn, like, what do I need to do when something really happens that affects me? Okay. And what I said to myself was, I can't do this alone. I need to go to therapy. Okay. And that's what I did. I went to therapy to get the help I needed. So if you have like like Julie G said, husband walked off after 35 years for a longtime friend. Okay. That's awful. And that's shitty that that happened. Right. But what can you do to get your life in gear so that way, because if you have another 30 or 40 years of your life, do you want to hold on to that resentment? Or are you going to say, yeah, do you want to be a victim for the rest of your life? Or do you deserve to have somebody who's wonderful in your life? Like, this is the things that you need to like decide and use positive self-talk and do the things you need to do in order to get the help you need, right? But this is you like taking action and being able to do that and doing the work. I always say, like, sometimes I say to myself, man, I lost this job that I really loved. And you know what? Like, I really truly believe sometimes the universe takes things away from us to protect us. Like, who knows? If that person, like, I'm just saying, using that example, that your person left after 35 years of marriage, for a friend, maybe that was a favor. Maybe you need to look at it, like, shift and look at it from a different perspective. Like, holy crap. Now, maybe I was living with somebody who I really didn't know. And that is when you have to take the responsibility and really look at yourself. But this is like doing the work. This is, you know, saying, I need to go to therapy. This was a trauma, and I need to understand how to resolve this trauma and see what happened here. So again, we have to make sure, somebody mentioned in here, like, about labels. Who mentioned that? Wayne. Recharging the battery of living status one subman. Somebody mentioned something about labels. We were talking about about us giving ourselves labels and how to move beyond that thought. Thank you. Yes. We ought to remember we definitely want to do that. I'm not going to go into it because we're almost out of time, but let me see if there's any more questions. Let me move down. I'm really sorry, Julie, that you went through that, and I really hope that you get the help that you need to overcome that, because that is a sucky and shitty situation. Can't shake the anger. Well, I hope, Julie, that you will one day. And listen, what you're feeling as far as being angry is totally normal. Again, when you get stuck in the anger and you see it start to affect other aspects of your life, that's when you kind of have to make a decision about, okay, is my husband and that friend who they're with, are they thinking about me? No, they're not. They're, unfortunately, it is what it is. But you deserve to have a great life as well. And you're doing the things that you need to do in order to help yourself. But you have to make a decision. And it's okay. Like you're angry, it's going to take time, but please, like you deserve something better in your life. You're going to learn to love yourself. You're going to learn to love that you're going to find something even better than that relationship. Okay. I really hope that, that happens for you. Okay. Thank you. The grief share program helped me a lot process my grief and loss. That's great for us. All right. Well, listen, it's 8:31. I really appreciate everybody for being here. Thank you for sharing that. And again, this is recorded, so I will definitely have this recording for you tomorrow. Oh, I was going to put a coupon code in there for you if you're interested. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can get that coupon code in case you're interested. Also on there, on that website, you could contact me or you could do a free consultation on any of those things. So you could take a look at that. Also, I wrote a book as well. It's called You're Capable of So Much More, which goes more into my story. Basically, it has like my Get Real Deal and Heal course in it as well. The book is on Amazon, so take a look at that website. If you're not really interested in the course, that's another option for you where I teach people about a lot of concepts: self-centered fear, unrealistic expectations, perfectionism, loving yourself, living in the moment, and gratitude, and provide a transformational toolkit for that. So let me go in and look at this. Hold on, bear with me, and I will get this coupon code for you if you're still here and interested. What is this coupon code called? Oh, here it is. It's called Heal 250. Here is the coupon code. So if you go to my website, all right. And I'll go to the actual thing here, which is the Mindset Mastery, which is my Get Real Deal and Heal course. If you use that code when you check out, you'll be able to get $250 off the course. And it'll only, instead of it costing $349, it'll only cost $99. So again, thank you for being here. And if anybody needs a free consultation to talk, please take advantage of that. And I hope to see you in a couple of weeks because I am going to do another presentation on your microbiome. So I hope to see you there. Thanks again, everybody. Take care and God bless. And thanks again for being here. Bye bye, everybody.